Recording in progress.
Just getting that little bit of silence for room tone. Have you guys seen that those videos that Kevin James, the comedian, makes? He makes these videos where he dresses up as a sound guy, and then he puts himself in a movie scene where he's trying to get a sound check. Like there's one from The Notebook, the scene where Ryan Gosling is just yelling at Rachel McAdams about "you don't really love him" or whatever, but he's cut himself in somehow to where he's like, "What do you really want?" And then he's like, I just want a sound check, Mr. Gosling. Could I just get a sound check?" And anyway, it's pretty funny. So there you go. Little jokes behind the curtain of audio engineering. Well, welcome to the Halloween episode of The Broken Brain this year. 2025 AD, the year of our Lord. That's what AD means, right? Anyway.
Yeah, sure.
That's two false starts there. We'll see which one of them makes it in. But anyway, I am joined today by a couple of returning champions to the podcast, returning guests, movie pop culture experts. We're going to go around and let y'all introduce yourselves to the people out there. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first, I guess. Hi, guys. My name is Dalin. You guys know me from being on Dwight's other awesome and with an E podcast. And I am a media connoisseur who has my own silly little pop culture podcast called It's Really a Podcast. And I'm really excited to talk about horror movies. Horror movies are awesome.
It's really a podcast, REEL, like a film reel. And are you really excited like REEL or REAL?
Both. Both are very much my vibe. So yeah, awesome. I would say both.
And then I'm Isabel Teran. I have also been on here a few times, I think. Yeah, a few times.
You've both been on multiple times now.
I think expert is a stretch for me, but, I'll still take it. I do a couple of podcasts on the Rabbit Hole Podcast Network. I'm a co-host on Hersing Around, where we just kind of cover recently deceased celebrities. And my main one is That's Bodacious Dude, 80 Radical Movies from the 80s, where I cover different 80s movies and have a guest, which both of you have been on. So that's been awesome.
Yeah.
It's a great show. I will
full
say,
circle.
Speaking of Halloween and horror, scary movies like we're going to be getting into today, your episode on The Shining was wonderful. It was really good. I
love Nick. Yeah, he was great on that.
Yeah. So it actually reminded me of one that I have not seen yet. We'll see if it comes up today. Probably not. But Dr. Sleep, remember? That's a sequel to The Shining. I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't either.
Well, I forget that it exists, like I think a lot of people do. And soon after it came out, I think, because I never heard anyone talk about it for something. You think that would be a pretty monumental thing. Like they're making a sequel to The Shining? Let's never talk about it again. I don't know if that's a good sign or not, but at least Ewan McGregor's in it. But anyway. So
I think they thought it would be like The Shining, Shinier or something, part 2, Shinier.
The Shiniest.
Yeah. Shiniest. The Shinier would be the
Sleep?
second
Like,
in the trilogy, and then Shiniest would be the third one. And then Shine On, Shine On, Gentle Diamond would be the fourth that you didn't know they were going to make because you thought it was just a trilogy. The prequel, exactly. The story of how I used the gift in preschool. Anyway, but that one I had a thought about that one that may or may not come up today. We're going to be talking about, as anybody who's heard this podcast over the Halloweens of the past knows, I'm fascinated by the things that make us enjoy being scared and the things that we do around Halloween. You kind of got the spooky factor, and then you've got all the way over to the terrifying, gory factor, I guess. Of Halloween, it kind of encompasses all of the levels of fear. We like to, whether it's just Charlie Brown characters putting on a bedsheet with holes cut in the eyes for a ghost, everybody. Sorry, I forgot about the current political tone of our country. They're dressed as a ghost in that Charlie Brown special. So you can have little sort of silly, little kind of fun, scared things that are great for little kids. They go out and, we're dressed up and, there's decorations that are kind of scary and, that one moved. or get the trauma of going into Spirit of Halloween as a very young child. And then all the way up until you can get terrifying, just horrifying scariness. And my whole point is that we all a lot of people like to gravitate towards fear and as a form of entertainment. And I'm fascinated by that. So we're going to be talking about some of the ways in which we do that, particularly some of the ways in which there are intelligent, scary horror stories being told, and we're going to give some examples and things of those. So, what are you guys? Do you want to tell people a little about your own experiences with Halloween or fear or any of those kinds of things? Should we? Yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah. So for me, Halloween's my favorite holiday of all time. Mainly because I am a kid who grew up with 90s Halloween, which I think is very specific flavor of Halloween.
Agreed.
Where it was very, corporatized in a way that made it fun for kids. And also, it's just very like comforting and nostalgic to me. But also, as someone who has always gravitated towards like classic horror stories, Halloween is kind of like the time where I can be the most myself and really like thrive in the macabre, weird shit that I like. So, it's just all of that. And also, like, how can you not love spooky cookies, delicious candy, great movies, fun costumes? It's like the best holiday ever. So, anyway, what do you think about it, Isabel?
I absolutely agree. I don't know when the shift happened. I mean, because I loved Halloween and Christmas for a long time, but at some point, Halloween definitely took over and has definitely been the majority of my life now. But 90s Halloween, I mean, that's definitely, obviously that was when I grew up, but I was just thinking about that. Like, everything kind of catered to the holidays, and Halloween was no exception. Like, you had like brand specific things, like the McDonald's commercials with the little chicken nuggets dressed up like vampires and stuff. I mean, it just seemed like everybody had special things for the holiday, and it's like, no, that costs too much money, we're not going to waste our time with that now. And it's just like, no. And hardly anyone like gives like decorates or especially gives candy out in my neighborhood anymore. And I don't know, like, I mean, I know it's expensive, so I get it, but also it's like, why?
It's a weird difference too. I mostly trick-or-treated in the 80s, because by the time the 90s came along, I was a young teen. Just, barely a teen.
I'm too old for Halloween.
It shifts a little bit from going out to, I was 13 right around when the 90s started, 12 or 13. And so I was just in that kind of those gap years of being like going from going out to get candy to giving out candy, right? To enjoying that. And I grew up in a city environment, and we had huge amounts of trick-or-treaters. I remember being a kid the first time we moved there, and it was like we were out of candy in 20 minutes. We had to like shut off the lights, board the doors, and move. Anyway, so we had to buy tons of candy, because we would have, we're talking like it could be a couple hundred, it was just kids. And they had a rule too in the city. It was like, these are the hours. You can start at this time. You're not going past this time. Get off the streets, So there were some rules around it. But I also remember I just did not interact with miniature candy bars that often, except for Halloween. They just weren't so plentiful as I see them all year long now. And so I kind of feel like at least maybe people just didn't buy them that much, or maybe it was just me. And people out there, let me know, I guess, if you're like, he's crazy. He just didn't run into them. But so there were little things that you really only got at Halloween time, like little boxes of Nerds and little things. And I feel like those, at some point there was a shift to where they were more available year round. And so I sometimes wonder if the candy isn't as much of a prize as it was for kids when I was a kid.
I think the thing that at least I know from my personal life, I don't know if you two can attest to something different, but like I work in a corporate office world, and having snacks in the office is very much like a readily available thing. And a lot of the time they are the mini fun size candies. Mm-hmm. So I think that's true that the accessibility of them is kind of made Halloween maybe not as special to a lot of people. And I think also because we're currently in a world where socializing outside of the internet has become like kind of like a forgotten thing.
Yeah.
That Halloween is like something that not a lot of people want to celebrate anymore. And I barely get trick-or-treaters at all where I live. So I don't know about you guys.
Interesting.
Yeah. A lot of people like leave to go to the better neighborhoods. I mean, and sometimes I would do that as a kid too.
I remember those.
Be like, they gave Coca-Colas. Like, it's a whole can. I got a whole can of Coca-Cola.
It makes me think of Hocus Pocus, where they're like, they give full-size candy bars.
Yeah, exactly.
That was crazy.
That was massive.
Yeah,
Like,
that
what?
was crazy when people would. I grew up 2 blocks away from the governor's mansion in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That was the city I grew up in. And so they actually would open the gates of the governor's mansion so you could walk onto the grounds and trick or treat. And usually either the governor or a member of his family would be, sometimes it was his kids, whatever, but he'd come out and give out, he and his family would come out and give out full-size candy bars. That was the one place you could get them. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's just like in Hocus Pocus with them going to, oh my God, why am I forgetting her name? The girlfriend character's house, because her family lives in like a big giant mansion. Yeah, Allison. And they Allison. Allison.
What do we call them? Yabos?
Yeah, Yabo. So they give out, and this is like a I feel like a very signature 90s in particular, but even before that like thing, they gave out the white chocolate witch-shaped like pop things. Like they were like chocolate on a lollipop stick. And I feel like that's a thing that like candy companies don't make anymore. So I'm just very nostalgic.
That's what I mean. Is a lot of them, they might have a different wrapper, but they're the same thing. Although you did get the Reese's vaguely pumpkin shaped.
Those are still around.
Those are
I was very happy when those were invented. I know there's some people who are like, I don't mess with those. I only like the cup, and I'm like, no, those are like the shapes. And now they have
the shape,
a ghost, a pumpkin,
consistency of the chocolate is a little bit better to the peanut butter ratio, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well,
shout out to Kit Kat for making a witch's brew with just marshmallow covered or something. I love that. And now this year they have Counts, which is like a full wafer. It's not 2 pieces. It's a full wafer, and it looks like a little Dracula. Super cute.
Love that.
I'm not trying to like endorse him or anything, but I'm just saying.
Endorse which one?
Sponsor this podcast, Hershey.
Yeah, exactly.
Big sponsor. Not only Kit Kat, but Count Dracula. What did I see the other day? Someone was saying that vampires aren't necessarily vampires are always depicted as in castles, but they said Dracula didn't own a castle because he was a vampire. He owned it because he was a count.
He was a count. Yeah.
There's a wealth disparity for vampires there. I hadn't really thought about that idea, but anyway, they weren't all investing in Apple years ago. Some of them were just slumming around. Anyway, so yeah, speaking of weird tropes of vampires owning castles, there we go. That's my segue. We're going to be talking. I was real curious about your guys' thoughts about a term that I hear sometimes, which is smart horror, and it's it's an interesting thought. The thought being that when do they use smart storytelling to make scary or horror stories in movies? I guess as I was contemplating that term, I'm always interested in genre designations. I don't know, because there are things I'll watch and I'll say, oh, it's a horror movie. And someone's like, no, it's just a thriller. And I'll be okay. And
I mean, isn't that the same? A little bit.
Well, see, that's my thought too. And you guys can help me. I think someone said that about Black Phone when I said, oh, Black Phone, that was good. And they're like, well, that's more of a thriller than a horror movie. And I'm like, okay.
A thriller, I feel, is just a subgenre of horror. That's how I feel about
that's
it.
A good way to put it.
Agreed.
Yeah. So then when you put in the idea of smart horror, I feel like, it's kind of inherently you're assuming that it's supposed to be dumb, I guess, right? Is that what that means then when people say that? Do they think horror is dumb? Because to me, any kind of storytelling can contain smart elements. And I think there are probably some things to talk about there as far as what do we mean by this idea of smart horror and intelligent storytelling? And why are people so surprised to find it in this genre?
I mean, I have always been of the mindset that I think a lot of people associate horror with the term like schlock, like it's like kind of trashy
Yeah, just
entertainment.
slashers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, kind of in the same vein of like exploitation films, like very, like it's just there as kind of like short digestible media and it's not supposed to like last long in your brain and all that. But honestly, I personally feel like horror is like one of the most intelligent genres of film ever because and just storytelling in general because it really taps into like the human psyche of like what are we scared of and what is the like perpetual cultural fear that's going on right now. And granted, yes, some horror movies are dumb, but so is every genre. So like, I don't quite understand why it has to be that horror is like this tainted thing that we shouldn't touch, like this, like forbidden fruit kind of way.
When you look at
a
it,
lot of people.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes we have a weird designation between like dumb schlocky entertainment and smart entertainment, and of course you can find examples which can be schlocky dumb. But the thing is that I find. For example, I think it is smart of someone making a movie to make the movie they're trying to make. If they know which movie they're trying to make and they make it, to me, that's smart, even if it's kind of silly or dumb on purpose. And well, I'll give you, kind of an example of this, actually. I'm going to name a movie. Let's see if this is a hot take or not. That it and the sequel are both maybe not regarded as hugely, oh my gosh, those are the best movies ever. Megan and Megan 2.0. Now, I would say that to me is a really great example of a movie that is not, neither of which are great movies, but they both know what they're trying to be. Maybe the first one a little more than the second one. But anyway, they're like, oh, we're going to get in here and do this thing about a doll that kills people. Great. And they did it. And it's like, that's what you want from that description is pretty much what you see. That's just an example for me of a movie that's like, yeah, we're trying to do this and we did it. And that's smart to me right there to say, we're not going to pretend it's something else. We're not going to try to cash in on tons of emotion that we didn't, deserve or this or that. So anyway, that's just a thought, and that's one example. But so I think you can do smart things with things that are maybe thought of as not that deep, and then all of a sudden it does deepen the enjoyment of it a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Definitely, like I would say that fits Megan pretty well, though I do think the first movie has some interesting things to say about parenting. That's like a thing that I really appreciate about that movie. But the second one is absolutely what it says on the box. And what I mean by that is it is very much a popcorn ridiculous movie that's like yes queening the entire time about Megan.
No. You know what strikes me as funny about that franchise is that you've got I was thinking about this when Megan 2.0 came out. It was obviously more of an action film than meant to be suspenseful or scary. And I thought it reminded me the last time that I know of a genre that was mass release that was like, oh, the first one's a horror movie and the second one is an action movie was Alien and Aliens. And I was like, well, this one doesn't, they don't quite, it's not, I'm not saying that they fit into that level of filmmaking, but I was like, but that is an interesting idea to change the genre with the sequel. So I'll give them that for sure. But no, you're right. And I think that's why sometimes you can watch and be like, yeah, she should have, I don't mind if she killed that bully or whatever it is that people might say. Because it's like, oh yeah, as a parent, you kind of want to do that, but so yeah, very ride or die caretaker. Well, let's. So when I invited you guys on, I wanted to get some examples of the use of smart storytelling in horror, and to come up with some examples. So all of us are going to share some of those. I want to throw out one just to very start with that. I should check to make sure I'm not stealing this from anyone, but I'll let them take over if I am. I just wanted to throw out a new one that just came out, which is Sinners. And I think everybody's talking about this and the use of intelligent storytelling. And it is a great example of the idea that you can make a movie that's a horror movie with lots of bad things that happen, and you can still make all the characters be smart and all the characters can be tough. and all of the characters can do what is essentially the doing as much as they can the right thing, that you could make a case as, yeah, that's a good thing to do, or that was a good thing to do. If there's mistakes made, they seem to be mistakes made by competent, smart people, not a bunch of dummies. And I think that goes against an expectation people have of horror sometimes. And there's lots of smart, brilliant things about Sinners, but that was the one I wanted to mostly point out, is that nobody's a dummy in that movie. Everybody seems to be quite smart and tough. And I think that's an element of a smart storytelling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, for me with Sinners, though, I feel like what makes it smart is because it's taking the cultural fears of immigrants and of Black Americans and translating it into vampirism.
Absolutely.
And I think that's fascinating. It's so funny that you said that, because I literally was just talking to two friends that haven't seen the movie yet and hyping them up on it for that exact reason.
Yes.
But yeah, especially the way it talks about, you know, I'm Irish, and the way that this movie talks about the way that Irish people were, you know, portrayed and also treated in certain immigrant circles is really fascinating, especially with the use of the Rocky Road to Dublin song. If you know the history, you know.
This is a horror movie so good that it gets away with kind of sneakily being a musical at the same time.
Yes. Yes. Love that. That's also a smart thing. Make more horror movies that are musicals, please. But yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that way of talking about the complicated relationship between Black Americans and Irish immigrants is fascinating, especially from like the way that they existed or coexisted in the South is really fascinating. But also just the way that in the flip side, Irish people were very much depicted as being, you know, sort of the minorities in Europe, that they were very much depicted as being, you know, not necessarily people that were very much liked, you know? So I think that movie does a brilliant job of that. So that is smart.
Also bringing in, it's interesting you say that, because the two protagonist twin brothers, played by Michael B. Jordan, Smoke and Stack, come back from their experiences as World War I vets, I believe, and going into working for the gangs, the Italian and Irish gangs in particular, who they both worked with and stole from. This is all setup of the movie. You know, they come back to establish this business in their hometown, but it's like they had to go. And where were they working? They were working for the Irish. They were working for the Italians, right? And so you bring in kind of this classification of immigrants, and yeah, just very. And then they even bring in some of the roles of Asian Americans a little bit in there too, with some of the characters. And yeah, and then of course there's that brilliant scene, that huge musical number that is sort of surreal and has a fantastical element that goes through the different genres of music, you know, and things like that. So yeah, very, very, it's very compelling. It would be a compelling story. And this to me is one of the nuggets that maybe we'll see in a lot of these movies, is that would be a compelling story, even if there are no vampires in it. You could make a movie out of these characters, you know, and the oppression and the presence of the Klan in the South and just those things. You could make a very interesting movie with these characters without having any vampires. And I think that's an interesting idea. It's like a really good episode of Doctor Who. I always say the best episodes of Doctor Who would make a great sci-fi movie without the Doctor being in them. Yeah. So that's another thing that I think about horror as well.
That's valid. Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
You haven't seen Sinners yet?
What? That seems right up your alley.
It is. I just missed the chance, and then I just kept missing the opportunity, and now it's streaming, and I haven't met a chance to do it.
Man,
treat yourself for Halloween. It's so good.
I'm off that day, so I do have plans to watch a lot of movies that day.
There you go.
That should be one of them. It's so good. But yeah, no, and I was also just gonna say, wow, why am I forgetting his name right now? The director of Sinners.
Ryan Coogler.
Yes, Ryan Coogler is a smart guy. So by default, it's a smart movie.
Exactly. Well, what have you guys brought? What are some examples you want to
You should tell Izzy. We want to hear what your movies are.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, my issue is I was like, a lot of movies I feel like I watch are dumb. They're mostly for like the shock factor or gore, are really gory. But I was trying to mull it over. I mean, I guess a more recent one that I have like rewatched was I really like The Cabin in the Woods because it kind of does those stereotypes, but it's on purpose, with all of this extra things involved. I love all of the different monsters that they have in it, and they're kind of like choosing their own fate, like the idea of it. And it's one of the movies that it ends on a low note. Like it's not a happy ending horror movie, but it's still I don't know, makes me think, and I'm just like, oh, I'm kind of sad. I'm gonna have to watch some cartoons now because
This is a great.
this is a sad one.
I think you've introduced two really important things there when we're talking about being smart with stories. One is how do the storytellers use the concept of tropes, particularly if they work in a genre that is filled with them, right?
Yeah.
You have to either say, are we going to use these tropes and just embrace them? Are we going to sort of know when we can break them? Or are we going to just point them out for the use of either comedy or the use of building a story with, oh, wow, I've seen that trope, but I've never seen it done in this way or whatever kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, they really lean into them, and it's just like, oh, because it's a purpose, like
Yeah.
it has this whole like ritual purpose to it, and I just always thought that was fast. That was one that I hadn't seen in years, and even the first time I watched it, I was like, wow, I was actually surprised at that, and that's also kind of rare when you start, especially since I watch a lot of slashers. It really set up like, this is just, everybody, is gonna get killed because it's a slasher movie and it doesn't matter, but there's all this extra to it that I really appreciated.
And that's that second thing that you allude to, which is I always used to think a horror movie always had an ending that was either disturbing or it had to be disturbing and nobody walks away, right? I mean, everybody dies. It's horrible. It's whatever. And I think so. I'm curious your guys' thoughts just about this idea. It's a horror movie. Should the ending leave you like, because there's more of a trend nowadays. I find that there are some horror movies where the people survive. More people survive than I remember in the past, I think anyway, or defeat the monster or somehow this or somehow that. But then they still, do we bring in that element of like, unless ... question mark
Somebody's eyes open.
I think if I remember right, and it's fine, we can hit on spoilers here and there or whatever, but I think doesn't the end of Cabin in the Woods end with like the whole world's gonna get messed up or
it's
whatever?
basically like apocalypse style.
Yeah, it's like this is going to go out there, and a surprising number of horror movies do end with, mankind's kind of not so good at the end of this on a worldwide level.
And I think what's interesting about that one is that technically good wins, but still like evil wins. It's like they survive that situation, but only to wind up still dying and killing everybody in it. And so it's almost like, well, that's unfair, but it's a horror movie, and you're supposed to just be like, dang, what if this is all a lie? That one was just a recent watch that I just really appreciated all of that, especially because like the stoner people always get killed first, and yet that was the guy who like really is pushing through on everything.
Well, and that's, I think, that intelligent use of tropes, right? To say, we're going to embrace them. And I find that the movies that embrace the tropes also are the ones that sometimes are the best at saying, and right here, we'll break it. And we'll break it in a way that's interesting or smart. But we're not going to because sometimes if you just make it about breaking the tropes, it's one thing to have, here's an original movie that doesn't follow those, but if you're trying really hard not to follow any, that can stand out a lot versus saying, here's the ones we follow and here's the ones we don't on purpose. It's it's interesting how people do that. So, well, Dalin, let's hit us up with one of yours.
So I brought an old school one to the party. The talking party.
You? An old school movie? This is one of the things I love about talking movies with you, actually, is you have so much knowledge about old Hollywood and old Hollywood stuff.
Thank you. Well, that is what I brought with me today to the conversation. And the movie I want to talk about is 1942's Cat People, or The Cat People, depending on what phrase you use. Now, have either of you heard of or seen this movie, perchance?
No, I don't think I have.
I haven't.
Okay. So, for those of you like you two, or for many people that haven't heard of it, this is a movie that was made by RKO, which is the film studio that, was kind of around during like the classic Hollywood era. And basically what happened is that because of the success of Universal Studios in their horror movies around the same time, RKO was like, well, we got to put out a bunch of horror movies because we want to, ride the coattails of Universal being super popular in the horror space. So they basically made this little sub, department in the studio where a guy came up with a name and then he gave it to a director. He said, okay, make a horror movie with this name. And this is one of them. So the guy came up with the name. He said, the Cat People, come up with the movie. It's called The Cat People.
A story about cats that starts with just a name. He's like, if Andrew Lloyd Webber can do it.
Okay,
in the future, I should say, because this is 1941.
Right, I was going to say, it's a foreshadowing, a precursor to Cats. But so, yes, it has a very silly name, but this movie is actually a really fascinating piece of horror history because not only is it, again, very significant for the fact that it comes from this specific era of horror, but it is technically the first horror movie to have the jump scare. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because it is incredible for that reason alone when it comes to, sound effects and the way that it creates that sort of tension to make you like, ugh, so scared. And it basically, for those who don't know, this scene happens at a bus scene where basically a character who thinks that another character is chasing her is walking by a bus stop, and it's all about the editing and the sound effects that make the jump motion happen with the audience. So it's really important for that reason. But the reason I'm bringing it is because I think this movie is incredibly smart, despite the silly name, because the basic plot is about a woman who is from Eastern Europe, who is a fashion designer in New York City. And she meets a man who she starts having a romantic relationship with. And the thing is that while they are, courting each other, he, as you would in most relationships, or most heterosexual, I guess, relationships, wants to be physical with her. But she doesn't, because from her culture that she came from, when you have a sexual, interaction, her people turn into cats.
Whoa. Okay.
Yes. So into like cats, like werewolf cats, sort of.
Okay.
So
she doesn't want to do that.
She doesn't want to kill him. She's been disposed to thinking that she will ultimately kill her sexual partner once that happens. So the entire rest of the movie is about how she is desperately wanting to be with this man, but internally there is this like internal force within her that wants to come out and wants to, be sexual, be crazy, be chaotic, and be unhinged and do all these things, but she's constantly repressing it. And while, again, this movie has a very silly name, it was filmed in a very cheap way, I think that the way in which they were able to make this movie, despite the limited budget and everything else going for it, made it one of the most important pieces of horror to ever exist. And so that's why I think it's a super smart horror movie, why I wanted to bring it to the conversation.
So they also had like one in 1982. Is that like a remake kind of situation?
Yes.
I was like, is that the David Bowie song thing?
Yeah. So that is a remake. And that movie's also great, but that movie is much more, how do I put it? It's much more like upfront with its sexuality because it's the 80s and not the 40s when there wasn't like the censorship code and everything. But I never know how to say his name. McDowell, the guy from Clockwork Orange.
Roddy McDowell?
Malcolm McDowell.
Malcolm McDowell.
Malcolm McDowell. So he's in it, and it's a really cool aesthetic movie, but I prefer the 1942 version just because I think it does a lot of subtle things that have a much bigger impact emotionally.
Yeah, I do like when it's more subtle, especially like older like sapphic movies as well. Like,
yeah,
they're like, I'm like, obviously this is a lesbian, just lead into it. I mean, but that's the whole point, with the older movies.
And that's the other thing about this movie too, is that there's kind of like a queer coding to it because, not only is she suppressing like this side of her that she can't like let out societally, but kind of like I was mentioning with the jump scare scene, there's a really interesting dichotomy that she has with another female character that sort of is like she wishes she could be this other female character because she doesn't have this curse, but also because she kind of like wants to be her just from like a single white female sort of like mentality. It's an incredible piece of filmmaking. It's part of the Criterion Collection. I just really hope that this is my big push for more people to see Cat.
Yeah, totally. I've already added it to my watch list.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
Well, and it also has, and I wonder if this is one of the things that you like about it, either because of this or because they have the same elements. It has a real Jekyll and Hyde. And if anyone's heard your recent episode that I was on, we get into Jekyll and Hyde a bit as one of your favorite stories.
Yeah.
Right?
I was so happy you guys brought up Mary Shelley. I'm like alone in that, my love for that movie. Like people were just like, why do you like this? And I'm like, I like it. Like, I just like it. I don't know why. I just like it.
The thing is like Gothic, that's a whole other thing. Gothic romances, and just in general, I feel like is a super underrated genre that I love to talk about. And also many of the movies in Gothic romances are super smart. But the other thing too is that, when it comes to me, I have a really big interest with stories with characters that have either a curse or like a transformation that they go through because of me being like neurodivergent and feeling like I had a curse when I was a kid. So it's something that I very much connect to in that way. And Cat People, I feel like really exemplifies that for sure.
Cool.
So
that's cool. I had not known that one. I'm looking forward to that. And it brings up that concept too. I think one of the things that makes an effective, you see, it's kind of a moral playground a little bit for a writer or a director or whoever to say, well, what's this like? I'm a person who might become a monster, but I'm not a monster as a person in my heart. And so, that's the whole werewolf. When it's done best, I guess the werewolf genre is like that. But, and sometimes you see that used with other monsters and other, whatever. But to say, is there something you can empathize with? Because even if someone is a monster, it's often a lot more compelling if you see that, are they trying to be a monster? Or are they trying to, once again, bouncing around to the centers? The vampires in that, one of the things is they make a point to point out that they're not just being evil, they're trying to survive. And they think we're perpetuating what we do, and so there's an element of that. Like I can empathize with the idea of trying to stay alive. I can empathize with the idea of believing that my way of thinking is correct, right? That kind of thing. And so I can empathize with the wanting to connect, wanting to, having the barriers up of what is prescribed, right, by those around in the world versus like, can you let go without destroying yourself and everyone? All that, that's interesting to have that element of empathy into the movie that we can put ourselves into it, right?
Well,
Even in
that's
the
why
shoes of
I
the monsters
always
sometimes. Anyway, yeah.
right. Well, and that's why
Yeah.
I've always related to monsters because I really feel like though on the box metaphorically of a story, they're considered the antagonist to some people. Really, they're just othered. They are the um minorities that are pushed to the side that people disrespect and don't give the kind of empathy and love. And if they did have that, then maybe their circumstances would be different. So
Yeah.
I have always connected to monsters because I feel like a monster, but also, there are, just such a fascinating dichotomy of layers to monster stories. And like I said, cat people, Jekyll and Hyde, and maybe my other movie I brought with me kind of fall into that category.
This is great. We go around again. I wanted, because what you just said ties in with this other one that I wanted to mention. And I feel like nobody talks about it once again. So I wanted to get this one out there. It came out a few years ago. We'll find that out here. But speaking of feeling othered and rejected, and trying to get into it, in 2023 came out, I don't think it ever hit theaters. I think it was just on Hulu, still on Hulu, called No One Will Save You. Have you guys seen this one or heard of this one? It's a really interesting the way that this starts out. It stars Caitlin Dever stars as a young lady who is just basically living in this house and also one of the interesting things about this is there is literally almost no dialogue.
No dialogue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody really is talking in this one. There is one line of dialogue that is very, very meaningful to the resolution or the of this character. And so and this is one of the things that I also think is important for any story, especially if you're going to take, here's a fantastical premise, which most horror movies have, either supernatural, in this case, in this movie, alien based. So you have aliens, and even in the ones that you have serial killers, it's still somewhat of a fantastical element. I mean, Hannibal Lecter's essentially a supervillain, right? He's not really representative of most humans that you see. So anyway, so we get an in here of like a supernatural idea, a fantastical idea, and then there's a person with a compelling story that lives in the world where this crazy idea happens, right? Because if you don't have an interesting person or interesting people, you don't have an interesting story, no matter how cool you think that the idea is. So she's living in this house kind of on the outskirts of this town. She's living by herself. Nobody seems to be there. She's like, has her own little hobbies. She sets up little kind of miniatures of a town in her house. She sets up bird feeders and things. When she does have to interact with the town, you realize that they do not like her, that there is something. People watch her go by, that there's a resentment. There's something that's happened in the past that has ostracized her from the town, right? And then essentially what happens is one night there's an alien invasion, and as is the name of the movie, right, is No One Will Save You. She's kind of out there. She's on her own, and she is confronting this idea of an alien invasion. And you find, and it has a wonderful combination that a lot of movies have of you're surprised by how capable she is when she tries to protect herself and do something, but it doesn't overdo. That's a balancing act because she doesn't like Home Alone the aliens off the planet in the first act or something, but she does try to survive. And the resolution of this, I will say that the whole third act resolution of this movie is not what you're expecting to have happen as you're watching it. Because with a movie like this, usually you're expecting either ultimately you're going to lose, it's a person against a whole bunch of aliens, or you're going to figure out something and they're allergic to, I don't know, water or the common cold or something, to use a couple examples from other movies. And, I accidentally discovered that perfume kills aliens, and then I can Morse code that message out to the world and everybody can perfume the aliens to death. That's not what happens, by the way, just in case anyone thought that was real.
Versace.
You're right. It wasn't perfume. It was Versace. No, but so it's
I'm
not.
just saying it would be funny. Like, all I have is this. It's $100. It'd be like, just use the perfume. No.
You should know number 5.
I'm saving it for my wedding.
Something silly.
But anyway, it doesn't resolve the way you'd think, and maybe we'll get into that. But anyway, so you guys,
No.
Yeah,
I
this
haven't
is an
seen it.
interesting one I'm throwing out there that I think people should check out. So it
I
becomes
will.
this interesting character study of an individual that is having this experience with aliens. And as we kind of learn bits about what made her in the situation she's in, and that ends up being very pivotal for what happens with between her and the aliens and the other people, obviously, because once again, alien invasion affecting everybody, but they don't like her.
Dang.
I won't
Okay,
throw a spoiler.
so-
I won't throw a spoiler out there. I'm gonna just encourage people to check it out to see what happens. But anyway,
Oh, I will.
is that something you guys we'll get into? Let's see. Well, I know. I just wanted to say that I wanted to ask your guys' thoughts about the thought of having an interesting person or people and how important that is in when we're telling this kind of a story instead of just getting lost in the idea of the story.
I'm thinking of this movie. I don't know. And that was my issue is I'm like, I watch so many, I think most of the movies I gravitate to are comedy horror. I mean, I do like a good horror movie, but I don't know, I find some solace in the comedy ones, especially when it's like I said, it's just really gory. But I don't know if this would be considered a smart one, but it's kind of adjacent to you, but it's called Brain Damage. And
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
and so it's there's like this parasite, but it's like, oh, he eats human brains and things like that, but it's very much like an allegory for addiction, and it's so spot on to addiction. And even though it is quite silly and quite funny, but like it's so accurate to that, I think. And even though it, like I said, it is a comedy horror, I feel like it still says a lot about that within all of that silliness.
That's interesting because to make something like a funny parody of something it usually works best when you come up with a good version of the thing you're parodying. Sort of. If it's like I want to parody something scary, I want it to at least, if it's not really scary because it's funny, it should at least be a good version of the story. It's like how if people remember the movie Warm Bodies, the kind of zombie rom-com, it was a pretty good zombie movie in addition to being a parody of zombie movies, right? Or Shaun of the Dead, better example. It's a parody of zombie movies, but it's actually a really good zombie movie, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And a good rom-com.
That's true.
Oh yeah, it is also a rom-com. I haven't seen Warm Bodies, but it's Nicholas Hoult is in that one. Is that?
Okay. Yeah.
That's another one. There's so many I haven't seen. Unfortunately, I like rewatching a lot of just terrible movies.
Well, you do have a podcast about movies from the 80s, and so we're kind of rolling the dice on those.
Yeah. I mean, this one I definitely recommend it, especially since you your field is with addiction and everything. So I believe it's the same person who did like Basket Case. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the first time I watched Basket Case, God, I was so mad. I like did not like it the first time, but it was also because I was like, just punt that thing. Why are you letting it control you? Like, but I never stopped thinking about it. And I'm like, well, it can't be a bad movie if I can't stop thinking about it. And I watched it again. I was like, oh, actually, I like it.
I call that the Chucky rule. I always make people mad when I say, oh, Chucky, he's so little. I know, he's magic. He's for whatever, strong. I get it. But it seems like you could punt him.
Exactly.
And see, for me, like I love those two of those movies because I think that they kind of exemplify like the exaggerated nature of having like an addiction or having in the case of Basket Case, a creepy conjoined tumor brother. To you,
it's controlling your life. Yeah.
But and
CCTV? No.
Yeah.
That's the medical
But
term.
I think we all have a version of like a demon on our shoulder, right? That's trying to like, make us do some not great stuff. And I think even though those two movies are the absolute extreme of those, it's a really fun way to artistically kind of fuel that in like an accessible, absurd way,
That's interesting. It reminded me in a way of, obviously, what you just said reminded me of the reboot of Miracle on 32nd Street Christmas time. No, but here's why. Let me explain. I didn't, that wasn't my creepy conjoined tumor making me go crazy. I don't think. But there's a line in there where, what's his name? The Jurassic Park guy who plays Santa Claus. I didn't prep this because I didn't know I was going to be mentioning it.
Oh, Richard Attenborough?
Yeah, Richard Attenborough. There we go. He plays, of course, Santa in the movie, and he's trying to explain to someone why the idea of Santa is important, right? Because the whole premise of the movie is he's Santa. Nobody believes him because he's working at Macy's, whatever. And that's not why they don't believe him. They don't believe him because it's a somewhat preposterous thing to assert. Anyway, but he's explaining to someone, he says, I'm a symbol of a time of the year where we try to basically transcend the selfishness and the fear that rules most of our lives. That's the thing I remember most about that movie, is that concept in there that he says we're trying to transcend selfishness and fear, which usually governs us. And it's interesting, as you're just saying. So now on the other hand, when we're diving into the scary, we're actually maybe dealing with, well, what happens when some of the fear and selfishness is actually primarily in charge? What happens then when it gets unchecked? Right. And then you have to deal with that, not only the fear and selfishness that might drive the monster or monstrous character, but also those trying to survive. Because a lot of times in horror stories, the scary part is, how do people react, right, to the monster? What do they do either to each other or what do they do to try to stop the monster, right? So,
yeah. I don't know why that made me think of Dalin Tucker versus Evil.
Oh yeah,
there we go. Speaking of the comedy horror,
yeah. I mean, again, I'm so huge on the comedy horror, but I love that one because it's like you think these, like, quote unquote hillbillies are the ones murdering people in the woods, and ultimately they're like the good guys, which is just hilarious.
That's awesome.
Let's see, Dalin, what were you gonna? What else you got for us?
So I was going to bring in another 80s movie just because, God, there's so many great pieces of horror from the 80s. And it's one that actually me and Izzy are going to talk about at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Fright Night from the mid-80s. I think it was 1985. I'm forgetting exactly what year, but also the remake, the 2011 remake, I think is also really good.
Yeah, you're correct. 1985.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad my movie cred has not been
it's pretty
taken
good.
away.
You guys are good at this, like pulling it out of memory. I'm always like, I'm going to look that up. Yeah.
It comes with the neurodivergent territory. I can't do my taxes, but I can tell you what year. But so the reason why I wanted to talk about this movie is that it's kind of like the perfect thing that we've been talking about. So on the outside, Fright Night is a movie that very much looks like 80s horror schlock. Like, it's very bloody, lots of prosthetics that are like absurd and crazy, like all that kind of stuff. But deep down, this is a movie that I think has a lot of really interesting things to say about the teenage, specifically sexual experience. And that's why I think it's smart. So, for those of you who have no idea what Fright Night is, it is the story of Charlie, who is a teenage boy who it has a girlfriend that he is slowly kind of, trying to have a sexual relationship with. And he is also obsessed with horror movies. And one night, he notices that his new neighbor across the street, whose name is Jerry, an iconic line, by the way, in the franchise is, Jerry? That's a vampire's name? Such a stupid name for a vampire. But anyway, so Jerry, the neighbor, basically is having a similarly sexual moment with a lady across the street. And it becomes quite clear to Charlie that Jerry may indeed be a vampire. And the rest of the movie, it's basically about how Charlie has a lot of paranoia about the fact that Jerry is a vampire and that no one believes him. And so he ends up hiring a famous TV horror host, kind of in the vein of like, Elvira or Vampira or Joe Bob, but his name is oh my gosh, why am I forgetting his name right now? But he's played by Rodney McDowell from Planet of the Apes.
It is Peter Vincent.
Peter Vincent, that was it. Yeah, so his name is Peter Vincent, and he hires him to kill the vampire. And he also recruits his best friend, who's Evil Ed. And they basically go on this crazy Scooby-Doo like adventure to try and kill the next door neighbor who's a vampire. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this, going back to the whole sexual teenage exploration thing, is that in this movie, Charlie and Jerry are kind of like the epitome of, and I never have like the most eloquent way to explain this, but hopefully you guys understand what I'm trying to say, of the Jerry is like the ideal image of what girls or people think they're going to lose, the person they're going to lose their virginity to. Yeah. And Charlie is like what you end up getting. It's like the fantasy and the reality. And I love how this movie tackles, especially from like the female heterosexual cis perspective, how young girls have this like incredible fantasy of what the person they're going to lose their virginity to is going to be. And in this case, it's the sexiest Chris Sarandon to ever be sexy Chris Sarandon in the sexiest eggplant sweater of all time. And
this was before that meant what it
yeah.
This is before text messaging even.
That's what she said. But this is before, obviously, if you don't know who Chris Sarandon is, before he would be the voice of Jack Skellington, before he would play, or around the time he played Prince Humperdinck in Princess Bride. So anyway, but he is like the fantasy because he is, this older man, but not like too old, but older man who is suave, is very, charming, is, incredibly, charismatic, everything you could want. And on top of it, the sexual intercourse moments that he has with the lead female character, Amy, is more tender, is more sweet, is more, consent, and is a lot more approachable and romantic, right? But he's also a scary vampire. But on the opposite side is right. Nobody's perfect. But on the opposite side is Charlie, who is a gross teenage boy. He, watches horror things while they're trying to make out. He rushes her into sex and then all of a sudden is like, oh, I don't want to have sex with you anymore. I'm paying attention to my neighbor that's a vampire. Can you get out of my house?
Probably would want her to watch him play video games if this had been made like a decade or two later.
Seriously.
Correct.
Yeah. Accurate.
Correct. Exactly. And so I love how this movie tackles the idea of both the fantasy and the reality of teenage girls experiencing sexual experiences for the first time in a fantastical way. But the thing is, the other reason why this movie's smart, because Jerry is a bisexual icon. And yes. Jerry not only is into the chicks, but he is into the dudes. And he has not only a I guess you could say, I like to call him Jerry's bitch, but his like sexy manservant who's also kind of sort of yeah. Well, it's kind of
sexy
his Renfeld. Sexy Renfeld, but he's also kind of like a himbo. I don't know. It's very specific. He's really only in the 80s version. He's not in the 2011 one.
Which is sad.
Yeah,
why'd you do that? You would think you could have leaned it harder in the newer one, which is ridiculous.
It just
But
kind of
this one, I
shows
definitely-
that's a weird thing. This is a side kind of, but there's these weird pockets, and I think we're experiencing now a cultural pocket of intolerance, right? That is making things at the same time that we're more open, we're also less open. But you see those little pockets, like you said, like there's queer coding in the 40s because people were putting that in there.
Right.
There's a thing, like you said, maybe from what I haven't seen either of these, but from what you're saying, maybe a little bit more comfort playing in the bisexual space than at that. Maybe there was a pocket around 2011 or something that, who knows? Yeah. Anyway, just interesting to where,
Yeah.
you might see it be different. Huh. Anyway.
Well, I think
pockets
there's a
of
degree. Yeah, I think there's a degree to which, weirdly enough, in the 80s, they were more comfortable talking about sex in like a more like kind of absurd way, but also not making it like, we're, putting a big flashing red light of like sexual conversations, but
There was a sharper
more of,
divide
like,
between adult and non-adult entertainment. And when I say adult
Right.
entertainment, I don't mean pornography in this case. I just
Right.
mean this is meant for adults. I think it was something to do with they were just kind of feeling out. Even the concept of PG-13 was invented in the 80s, right?
Right.
And so
Correct.
feeling
Right.
out, is this a grown-up or a kid one? And there's pros and cons. Now we have a lot more things that are more palatable in the middle for kids of a certain age or older and adults as well. That's great. It's really good we have that. But it's just an interesting difference, as you put it. There was more demarcated between, oh yeah, we can have swearing and sex in this because it's for grown-ups. And of course, I mean, I realized as I said that we're talking about the 80s. We'll only put some weird little elements of sex and profanity intermittently in family movies back in the 80s. Just drop it in a weird scene here and there versus like, but anyway, I don't know if that was why, but anyway.
Yeah, well, I think you're definitely getting there, like along the lines, but I also think it's kind of goes in hand with like what was like the sexual like freedom of things like MTV, like Madonna and all this kind of stuff. And I think that this movie really talks about the provocative nature of teenagers at that age and discovering themselves and figuring out who they are. And, there's a degree to which like, these characters are kind of figuring out like, what is their sexual orientation? Like, who are they? Like, as adults outside of being teens. And, Jerry kind of brings that out in them where he's like, he says things like, I know that you're made fun of and I want to, give you the gift. I want to give you this freedom, to be this thing. And, it has its consequences, but it's still handled in a really interesting way. So
Interesting.
go watch Fright Night. It's great.
I love that one. I mean, and I think more recently watched that one within like the last 5 years or so. That was a newer one. I didn't grow up on that one. And then, of course, once I saw that, I was like, well, obviously I have to watch the 2011 version, especially since it had David Tennant in it. And I had already gone through my Doctor Who phase. And he's like the sexy vampire host, magician type. I don't know what they did.
Well,
in this
he's
newer movie.
the Peter Vincent character,
Yeah.
but instead of being like a horror TV host, he's like sort of like a Chris Angel magician kind of character.
Why did they do
David
that?
Tennant
But it's
as
fine.
a Chris Angel magician trying to kill a vampire? That sounds
Yes.
insane.
Yeah,
There's
it's also
literally
incredibly
a
hot.
scene. Oh, he's so hot in this
He's
movie.
so
And there's a scene where he is walking through his like penthouse in Las Vegas, because of course he's like a Las Vegas act. And literally it's so good. He's taking off like all the fake hair and like the mustache and everything. And then he's just like in literally just leather pants. And it's like 10 out of 10. Perfect. Yep.
Agreed.
I love it. Yes. And also it has Colin Farrell and Anton Yelchin. So you can't go wrong with that.
Nice,
It's
all
great.
Oh yeah, he plays Charlie.
Yes.
I was just
So
trying to
good.
think. We need to do some kind of analysis on former doctors and vampire movies, because Matt Smith was in. It qualifies. It's still a movie.
Morbius.
He's in Morbius. In fact, the only thing I would really recommend about Morbius is the one scene where Matt Smith. Matt Smith's character infinitely more interesting than Jared Leto's, titular Morbius
of
character,
course.
because he seems like a guy who really digs being a vampire. There's one scene where he kills a bunch of guys in a very enjoyable way that you can tell he's loving it. It's the scene that is worth, well, you can probably find it on YouTube. I wouldn't say to watch Morbius for it. Anyway, it's just interesting how many other doctors. Yeah. Peter Capaldi was in World War Z. That's a horror movie. It's not a vampire. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I think the best scene of Matt Smith and Morbius is when he's dancing around his penthouse apartment.
Oh, see, that ties that. Yes. No, that's true. That's in there too. But yeah, look up Matt, because he kind of does a little dance while he's killing all those guys too, where I'm like, I want a movie about this guy. I don't even care that he's a villain. I want to watch this guy going around the city just being a vampire and enjoying it.
God, you could do a whole podcast on just vampire movies and vampires in general. Like, I love vampires. I mean, and if we're going on Doctor Who things, I don't know if any of you seen Lair of the White Worm. I wouldn't consider it a smart movie necessarily, but I just thought that was I liked that one. It's weird and it's interesting, but it's not one I necessarily just recommend to just anyone. But it has Peter Capaldi is like an archaeologist. He finds this like snake skull in this yard, and Hugh Grant is in it. And
wow, okay,
they're very young. And there's oh my God, what's her name? I don't remember. Hold on, now I have to look it up because I feel like maybe you would know her name.
I do enjoy the idea of an archaeologist finding something in someone's yard. It's like, it's like,
I was just like, what'd you dig up? And it's just like, oh, this giant like snake skull, and look at this mosaic that's from around these years ago.
His spouse is like, would you leave work at work? He's like,
I Amanda
like the
Donahoe.
Idea. Oh,
plays the Lady Marsh, who is ultimately, I don't think it's giving it away because it's very obvious. Like they kind of like, it's just very obvious there's snakes involved, and that's why it's not necessarily vampire, but it is, with fangs, I guess. But she's like a snake lady, and she's trying to find like a virgin sacrifice for the giant snake to feed it to. And Hugh Grant is like a descendant of the person who first killed the giant white snake and everything. It's very silly. There's a lot of weird things sometimes, but I mean, just for that alone, I think is interesting. And Peter Capaldi.
Oh, I have to watch this because they look like snacks.
Yes. Oh my God, Peter Capaldi's so cute with his little glasses on, and at one point he like is playing the bagpipes in his like little kilt and everything. I'm just like, yes.
Sold.
Yeah. That's a weird one. But it's again a supernatural comedy horror.
Let me just admit,
I'm just bringing in the comedy horror.
Smart and thirsty horror movies. Okay, just putting that into the
can't be helped.
Well, I think the smartest horror movies are the ones with hot people in them. I think it's
honestly,
just
it is
default. True. You don't see Jack Nicholson in any of these movies that I'm talking about.
Wow. Wow. Shots fired. Yeah. Hey, wait a minute. Whoa. One of the most famous of all, though, is The Shining. Izzy did a whole episode on it. He's in that one. And boy.
And that one is considered, very smart. I mean,
very smart. I don't know if anyone considers him a snack in that one because he's maybe too scary. And
when I was more mentally ill, I did, but now in my today's brain, I was like, "Oh, sweetie, that's so toxic. Like, why do we like this guy?"
Hey, that works in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest too. As far as that goes, I mean, same kind of.
It was
guy.
Also like Batman, like him as Joker. I don't know what was wrong with my brain, but now I'm just like, Isabel, sweetie.
Caesar Romero or nothing.
If you ever get to listen to a friend of the show, Joel, who has his Oscar podcast, I went on a 20-minute rant about how I think Jack Nicholson is the slimiest looking man I've ever seen. So
exactly. He is. Like, even when I told my friend's just like, what is it? I was like, she's like, I just don't understand how anyone could find him. And I'm just over here and all in shame. And I'm like, just I don't know how to explain this, but at one point in my life, I craved the toxicity.
Your brain was not fully seeing the light, and that's okay.
It wasn't, because now I'm just like,
I was gonna throw out there though too, and just as we're closing up, I just reminded me though, as you mentioned, well, I guess I mentioned The Shining, but you brought up Jack Nicholson, which, you know, how can we help it? But with The Shining, it also hit me on something else that I remembered kind of thinking for this episode, which is having a story or an ability or something inside the movie that doesn't have to be there. The fact that the kid has this little psychic power, it's like, that doesn't really have to be. You would think a lot of people would make that story without putting something like that in it, but having something interesting in the story that adds interest. And that reminds me in a weird way, of a non-psychic horror movie, Psycho. If anybody goes back and watches the original Psycho, one of the things that's the most interesting, I watched that for the first time a few years back, and there's no trace of this being any kind of a murder. I think it's like halfway through before we realize that, you know, if you didn't know that this is a serial killer horror movie, you wouldn't just know it, because it has a whole plot line of a woman who has decided to try to restart her life by stealing, embezzling money from work. And she's kind of on the run. She's trying to be discreet, and there's people looking for her. And she finds, and that's where she stumbles into the Bates Motel, just by happenstance, and then we find out, oh, there is a serial killer in this story. But it's quite a ways through before even just the iconic murder in the shower scene and everything. It's like halfway through the movie. So it has its own, this other story, whereas I think there's a certain boldness to that, and maybe a smartness to that, to say, here's the world, something's happening, and here's our monster, boom, just placed into the world as it exists. That's a, you know, kind of a thing to do there.
And you think it's just crazy mother. Yeah.
Yeah, right. If you, I mean, you imagine it coming out when you might not have, you know, I don't know how it was advertised or whatever, but I'm sure there were still those back then that didn't watch trailers, that didn't want it to be spoiled. And they would just be like, oh, this is an interesting little criminal heist movie. And what a weirdo working at this hotel. Oh my gosh. You know?
Yeah.
Well, that was the whole thing, is that when that movie was released, they really banked it on people going to see Janet Leigh, because they were like, oh, Janet Leigh's so pretty. Oh my God, she's so hot. She's going to be in a shower at one point. And then, you know, to have her be the star of the movie and die halfway through and not be coming back at the end in a twist, like, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
That was huge.
And a bold thing to kind of do there as well, to occasionally show actual consequences of someone's actually dead, and it's actually, oh, we like this person and now they're gone, you know, to actually play with that fear, which is, of course, one of our inherent fears of the actual things that's scary about death, is the absence of the person, if you will, and the absence of us. So, well, this has been really, really great. This is, I love to bring these kind of like this perspective about scary stories, or whether specific, general, or in this case, a lot of nice specific homework assignments for everyone to go out there and check out. And encourage everybody to find whatever level. If you're just not into this Halloween-y thing at all, that's fine. But, you know, finding if there's a spooky level, a scary level, or whatever, I'd love to hear from people about how they're doing that. I want to mention your guys' podcast. Let me real quick, though, mention that the charity of focus for this month, October and November, we're doing a double up these 2 months, because the Because organization, which is an organization that helps those who were formerly in the situation of being trafficked in human trafficking situations, those who have emerged and survived from that, to help them after the fact, which is a necessary and often under-focused niche of people's needs. They need academic help, vocational stabilization. They need to get into learning how to get medical care, and just all of those different things, including psychological, trying to help, and all of the elements of having been through this experience. So the reason we're focused on them for the 2 months is that there's a 2-month walk or run-a-thon that is a fundraiser, and it is a virtual event to where you can go onto their website, becauseorganization.org. And even though they're located in Philadelphia, you can participate in this fundraiser no matter where you are in the world during the months of October and November. So we are, I think I had Marcia Holt, who's the founder of that, just on the other day in an episode to talk about this. And so it's an exciting event that's going on and a great organization. They've been on the show several times as well. So, all right, well, tell everybody, where did we remind everyone where they find you again? Names of your shows?
So I am at on the Instagrams mostly, and also on YouTube with It's Reely Dalin with 2 E's. And you can also find my podcast, It's Really a Podcast. And eventually we're going to be doing some miscast mysteries where we talk about terrible miscastings in movies, including the first one, which will be the movie Marry Me, and the miscasting of Owen Wilson as the romantic lead in that. So
this is going to be an intro. I'm excited to hear this series.
Of all movies we
Thank
talked
you.
about, that one I have seen somehow. I don't know why, but I watched that one.
It's you
Maybe
guys.
we'll need to talk about it, Izzy.
And you're going to, of course, put Jack Nicholson in. Anyway, Izzy, what's your... tell people where to follow you.
You can find both shows at rabbitholepodcast.com, along with so many other shows, either have stopped or are still going. Mine specifically are Hersing Around, and also That's Bodacious Dude, 80 Radical Movies from the 80s. You can also find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. I am, I think, on Instagram, that.weird.chick.izzy, all these dots that I didn't know I'd have to repeat because I got into podcasting. And then just That Weird Chick Izzy on Blue Sky, so I can, post the episodes when they come out. So yeah, the most recent one I released was Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for being there. And everybody out there, thanks for listening. And happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you for listening to the Court and Parts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court and Parts shows, visit courtandarts.com.